Hello, my name's Corey and this is my final project for CS 112. For this project, I decided to make an English learning app. One of my passions is English. I enjoy reading as well as writing, and I enjoy reminding people when they've used certain words incorrectly. I think it's good that everyone knows English to a certain degree, and so I thought it'd be fun to make an app that kind of teaches some of the basics of English. This app is kind of designed for children, so yeah, there's going to be some pictures and stuff for kids. So I'm going to start off with my words section. These are all pretty simple, so I'll go over this pretty quickly. We'll start off with words. Word itself, which is a class that implements word helper. This class is an abstract class. All of its children are adjective, noun, pronoun, and verb. So there's 4 children. And word implements word helper, as I said, which is a custom interface. And that interface is right here. We have string get word, void set word, with the parameter of word, so it's the getters and setters for the words, and then it contains. And the contains tells us if a word exists in one of the array lists for our given word classes. Move on to like the verb class. All these word classes act the same, but they have different words inside of them. Each one has an array list like this, and it takes an array and puts it into the array list as a list. One issue I had was I noticed it was hard to form sentences unless I made sure that everything was in the same tense and everything kind of had to do with the same subject. And so instead of, if I had more time, I could do more with this, but instead I decided to keep everything to the past tense, and that made it much easier. In the future, I could mix it up and extend this program if I wanted to include present and future verbs, nouns, things like that, just to make sure that they all fit together. Moving on, we have, since this class extends word, we must also implement word helpers methods inside a verb, which we've done. So we have our getter, which just gets a word. All of the getters are set up so that they return a random word within the array list. We have our setter, which, I've never actually needed to use this for this project, but just in case, there's a way to add words. And the contains method, which takes advantage of array list contains, but I also needed a contains method within these classes to make this work easier. It's just a lot easier to call on contains from verb itself rather than having to go through its verb's array list. So I set this up this way. And as you can see, pronoun and adjective are pretty much the same. Noun, the only difference is that there's 2 types of nouns, one for people's names and one for food names. Food was the theme that I went with for all the sentences. And then finally, the last thing in the words package is the sentence class. Sentence class takes all of our previously made classes and turns them into a sentence, basically. The nifty thing is, because of the way that I set up these getters, they are always randomized every time we make a new sentence. And that is kind of what I wanted. Every time a new sentence is formed by the game, it will be totally different, and that's perfect. For one of the big problems I had with this project was holding on to the answer, and I found that the easiest way to do that was to keep track of it in the sentence class. So sentence, when it makes a new sentence, like here in the noun sentence, it creates a new food, a new name, and then the answer we're looking for is a name, so it's going to hold on to that name. and then the user will be able to guess the answer, and it'll know that it's the right answer or it's the wrong one. And that's important because if it's the wrong one, we can tell the student the correct answer, and that's pretty nice. So I have noun sentences, adjective sentences, and pronoun sentences. They're each formed a little differently, and they'll each have an answer based on what kind of sentence is being formed. And I form those randomly for the users so that they're constantly having to be like, is this a noun, is it an adjective, is it a pronoun, and then figure out what the actual word is. And then finally, the last class is a helper method, or the last method here is a helper method, and that is is this a vowel method? So first we're going to take a character, the first character of the word that the user entered, or I'm sorry, the word before a or an in my sentence, because if the word after that starts with a vowel, then it's going to be an. If it doesn't start with a vowel, it's going to be a. And we don't want to be spitting out grammatically incorrect sentences. So as you can see here, it's either a or an, depending on if it's a vowel. So that was just a nifty thing that I had to do to make sure students are learning proper English. So that covers it for the actual logic of my program. Let's move on. Let's do the view first. So the view is part of this model view controller thing that I'm kind of learning recently. The view is like the eyes of the program. It's what we get to see. The model is like the brain. And the model holds all the logic, the business logic, or just whatever might need to be done throughout the entire project. And the controller actually does what the model tells or wants the program to do. And the way that works is we make this instance, this controller, and we put our logic inside. Okay. So the logic for this one is to save to a binary file, or to load from one, and this is when the controller is created. And then later on here, when we create a controller inside of another class, we can use all these methods we have here in any other class, which is pretty nice. And we don't have to create these methods over and over again inside of other classes. We can just call them a controller and be like, hey, I want to see the score, I want to see the current streak, or I want to save data. So that's pretty nice. And then the final thing, the most important thing that the controller does here is it takes the model's method to write to a binary file, and it saves whatever we're looking to save. In this case, it's the player's high score. Let me just show you that real quick. This is more of just proof of concept. If I had more time, I could come up with better things to do than this, but I just wanted to prove that I understand, first of all, serializable, as well as the model view controller scenario. So what we have here is a high score. It has get score, set streak, set streak, and then it has its own constructor with the score. And all of this is saved and loaded by the controller, and then high score here by the instance. And then I'll show you here in the model. This is checking. So a lot of this is taken from the example in the project, because I wanted to be able to save as well, and honestly saving is going to look similar across programs. So this is checking to see whether or not there actually is data in the binary file, or if the binary file exists. If it does exist, then we'll be able to load from that file. Otherwise, we would just load a default constructor high score, which would be a 0 with a score of 0 and a streak of 0, basically. The load file, that's what happens when the controller is made with that get instance. And let me just show you real quick. In the main scene, it's probably in the game scene. Yeah, in the game scene we have we make the controller finally, and we call on its get instance, which loads if you remember, loads the information from high score. And if you don't have a high score yet, this would just give you 0, 0 for the high score. If you do, then it'll load up the correct info. Okay. So that's pretty much it for the model and controller. It writes and loads from file. That's what the model knows to do. The controller actually tells the program to do it, and then the view, we'll move back to that now. View allows us to see whatever we've made in our scene, whatever might exist. It loads the scene, it sets the stage, and then it tells the View Navigator to load up the first scene. The View Navigator is pretty nifty. This is also taken from the example project. I really liked what they did with this. The View Navigator loads an initial scene, or is told to load an initial scene by View. And so it sets up this initial scene, and then it loads whatever scene we tell it to load at any point. So it starts up this main scene here with View Navigator. Load scene, this is the main scene, English learning game. And then it would send us here, basically, if I press play, it would pop up the screen, and we'd be able to see everything in our main menu. And then the View Navigator, what it does, when we go to our main scene, we're open here, we have these methods with the View Navigator included that load scenes, and based on buttons that we press, either the play button or the dictionary button, we'll go to another menu. And we'll remember this current menu that we're on before we go there. And that way, if a scene suddenly closes or something happens, it's just going to reload the previous scene. It's a pretty nifty method. Okay. Now that we know how View and View Navigator work, I'm going to move on. I have 3 minutes left, so I'm going to be quick here. This is the main scene. As you can see, we have a lot of images or image views with images inside of them, and they're attached to buttons. Let me just bring up the main menu again. I made this a tab pane. That way I could click through. As you can see, there's multiple selections. Oops. I made sure everything's pretty well formatted. I just accidentally moved the window, but everything's well formatted to fit in the boxes. 4 of these tabs are literally just informational for the student to understand what they're looking for. And I'll show you the main scene. This is it, basically. These 2 buttons lead to the other 2 big scenes in the game. I'm going to go ahead and hit play on here. Alright. This makes random sentences, as you can see here, spits them out and asks you which is the pronoun. So I can go there and enter it. It says correct, and it gives me a current streak. Which is the proper noun? Let's say I do Simon, but I spell it wrong. It says sorry, answer was Simon. So it makes sure I know. And as you can see right here, we've got our best score and streak. This is just my previous game. It won't count this until you actually hit start game, at which point this timer will start counting down, and then you want to start entering answers as quickly as you can. Yeah. So we'll go for this for a second. And then, if I got a higher score on this than my previous score, then at the end it would tell me, it would change these scores, and it would remember it, and then I could choose if I wanted to save my new high score. Hitting back goes back, and then finally for the dictionary, if I hit play, here I can type in any word, hit enter, and it brings up the word. If it's not a real word, then it tells me it's probably not a real word, according to Merriam-Webster. So yeah, that's just in case a student sees a word they don't understand. And a lot of this explanation for this code is going to exist in my summary Word document. Sorry I couldn't cover everything. If you have any direct questions for me, please feel free to email me and I will answer anything. This is 100% my code, and thank you for listening. Have a good day.